Hi, everybody, and welcome to Mahamudra for the People. I guess this says session 30, um, or session 28, rather. Yeah, and thank you very much. I hope everybody's doing well and is healthy, happy, and that your practice is well. Um, so today is going to be a little different in terms of taking a little bit of a break from Shabkar. Um, and I'll explain why. But I think right now, if we can take a little bit of time to do some meditation, it's exactly 2 o'clock right now, at least here in the East Coast. So let's sit for about 12 minutes as a way of settling. And just bring yourself back to whatever it is that, whatever instruction feels the most comfortable to you, whether that be bringing awareness to breath, bringing awareness to field of reference, field of visual field in front of you, whether it be a visualized object or an actual object. Allow yourself to let go of past, let go of the future, let go of any ideas about this particular moment. Let go of the need to do anything. Let go of words and meditation instructions. And just allow yourself to rest naturally, freely, singularly with what is arising in the moment. I'll sit like this for 12 minutes. Okay. So it seems like maybe a couple of technical issues that some people might be experiencing. So just slowly bring yourself back to this moment. Oh, into this gathering. Okay. All right. So, welcome back to Mahamudra for the People. And I want to take a little break from Shabkar, and take a little bit of a break from. Yes, I was still. Take a little bit of a break from formal meditation instructions to get out of our heads. That can be really helpful. To get out of our heads and to do something very different than some traditional stuff. And why is this important? This is important sometimes because even though when we're motivated by practice, and we're making progress, quote unquote, in our practice, things are moving along nicely. Sometimes we are inadvertently kind of like dropping a little needle behind us that is creating a groove. And this groove is kind of along the lines of the kind of grooves we might find in a record, right? And we find ourselves stuck, without even knowing it. We're stuck in this, Buddhist place of practice, practicing Mahamudra, practicing Shabkar, practicing, the practice of shamatha, practicing with establishing a sense of quiescence in relationship to mind. I don't know what we're going to do with Tim here. And so it's this process of getting stuck in formal instructions. It's almost like, sometimes the path we can enter, when we're practicing, we're moving through space, practicing, engaging with Dharma instruction, engaging with practice. And we can hit these weird pockets of just, lots and lots of meditation instruction, and we can get lost in the instruction. And we can begin to solidify the instructions. And when that happens, because that happens from time to time, it's not really a bad thing, technically. It's definitely nothing to be punished for. But the antidote for this is to get out of our heads, right? To get away from how this formal practice can become rigid, can become not stale, but like defined by the terms and defined by the instructions themselves. And I think that we forget somewhat naturally that what we're supposed to be experiencing, quote unquote, the goal is mind completely free of any elaboration. And the experience of mind completely free without any elaboration is something that requires a little bit of a leap from the instructions themselves. And if we stay stuck in the instructions, if we cling to the instructions, we have a hard time making that leap because we can become very attached to them. We can become attached to instructions. We can become attached to instructions from specific people like Shabkar or others. We can become attached to a tradition. And we can also become attached to this desire to stay in a realm which is very comfortable and known and able to be easily returned to. And one of these things that we're easily able to return to is the comfort of the instructions themselves. Yeah, and so Payne asks, is this one the right one or is that one? Yeah, or when they say luminosity, they mean luminosity, and I have to experience luminosity. And if I'm not experiencing luminosity, then I'm doing practice wrong. I think it's very helpful to remember, and I do this to kind of keep in the back of my mind, that the words are not etched in stone. This isn't like we're not supposed to approach everything in this biblical sense where it's the one word and there can be no deviation. I think it's much more helpful to get out of that kind of very intense kind of view of everything is etched into stone and do not deviate from that into a realm of being surrounded by impressionist painters who are all trying to capture the nature of mind. But when you look, or pointillists, when you look, it's, everything is pointed out. But in order to have the direct experience, you need to go do it yourself. So this has a lot to do with letting go and a lot to do with stepping into the practice more and learning how to let go of the instructions in any particular form, whatever way they arise. So how to hold, and this kind of comes back to something that I've mentioned before. My root teacher used to always tell me, if you have to read and forget, and especially when it comes to nature of mind kind of things like Mahamudra, or if anybody here is practicing Hatha Yoga. Read and forget. Read and forget. Read and forget. Don't read and sear into your consciousness the instructions. Don't let the instructions become glasses that you put on and be the only way that you feel like you can experience reality. Rather, recognize that the instructions are very well honed, gold markers or signposts that point in the direction. But as we move, we don't need to run all the way back. Oh, wait a minute, it said 3 miles. Go the 3 miles. Wait a minute, did it say 3 miles and you run all the way back? It should be more, trusting into the process, trusting into the instructions, and then letting the instructions go. And so, I've been talking with some folks on an individual basis, and I kind of want to address this a little bit more here. This idea of Mahamudra being something that arises naturally from devotion. And, this I acknowledge is going to be a kind of tricky topic because Americans have problems with devotion. I don't know if people from other countries / cultures do, but Americans really don't like depending on other people. We like to depend on ourselves. We like to be our own guides. We don't like to put the reins in anybody else's hands. We don't like to be subservient. We don't like to yeah, we don't like to bow. Many Americans don't like prostrations. Many Americans find problems with guru yoga and things like that. And so I want to begin to kind of address these things a little bit because of two things. I think on one level, there's a bit of a misunderstanding of what devotion means. And on a second level, I think that we could sometimes all benefit from letting our heart, the belt around our heart, like, letting that belt out a couple of notches so that our heart can expand a bit. Yeah, and so sometimes it is Judeo-Christian traumas. So there have been plenty of cases of Buddhist traumas, related to teacher abuse, sangha abuse, uh, and that should be named. I don't mean to make light of any traumas that anybody's experienced in Buddhist communities where there's been an abuse of power by teachers or by sangha structures. That's real. We see that in Shambhala. We see that in other places. We see that in the Rigpa community, and we see that in other sanghas as well, Vajrayana sanghas. But what I would like to kind of introduce here is, a little bit of verse from other traditions, because sometimes I feel like the other traditions get devotion especially better than Western Buddhists. Western Buddhists, and forgive me if I'm a little harsh, but Western Buddhists are too brainy, too intellectual, too knowledgeable for their own good, too in the head, too overeducated, too fancy, too highbrow, right? And what is this exercise that I'm doing right now? It's trying to, poke some holes in some of the really bizarre, rigid, the bizarre, rigid Western Buddhist world. Neurotic, yeah. So I'm just gonna say some stuff, right? So the way Tricycle Magazine, just everybody Tricycle Magazine is geared towards an upper class, very educated Buddhist. That's just the way that is, right? Most people seem to come into contact with Buddhism while they're in college, right? So there's this kind of higher level of education piece, right? It also kind of means that there's an economic piece to it too, right? That there's this aspect of being at least middle class to be able to connect to the wisdom of the Dharma, which is absurd and unrealistic and just shameful. The number of people, and we see this kind of in the older generations, the boomer generations of teachers, how many people, I've always been fascinated by this, early boomer Dharma teachers went back to get master's degrees in psychology or PhDs in psychology. And why did that have to happen? And B, why are those people taken more seriously, by, the educated elite? And it's because they follow those rules, right? But Mahamudra is not about following rules, right? Mahamudra has nothing to do with rule following. Mahamudra is about direct experience of mind. And it's very important to remember to shake off the words, to shake off the instructions, to receive them, shake them off, and practice. Receive them, shake them off, and practice. And, sometimes we find ourselves stuck in these places where we inadvertently become pretty calcified and unable to let go. you know, and writes, really nicely, like a deep desire to trust, difficulty letting go. That's a good meditation instruction. Difficulty letting go. And yet the practice of Mahamudra, not only requires that, but realization is kind of predicated on there being an intimacy, a sense of direct intimacy with what's arising. And this is hard when we've kind of cloistered our hearts away, maybe by the intellect, and the intellect has built the big ivory tower and the heart is inside of that. And the heart, the heart can feel a little bit, it can look through the little panes of glass, right? But the heart isn't out there. The structuralism of the intellect, the ego, and, knowing this, I know Madhyamaka, I studied Buddhist philosophy, I have a master's in this, I have a PhD in that, therefore, blah, 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 blah. So I would like to move away from that simply because there's so much beauty in having an open heart. And it's important, and I find this even, within myself, kind of having to check in sometimes to see when I become too heady, heady in my own practice, heady in relationship to others. And, why that might be the case. And so sometimes that's the case because the intellect, the intellect can replicate very easily, the appearance of understanding things in a way which makes us feel good about ourselves. So that's one piece. It's kind of very sticky, like an attractive place to be, is to think, I know a lot about this or a lot about that. It's easy to intimidate people by just bringing up lots of complex Buddhist terminology. It's easy to impress ourselves. And then it's also easy to kind of, seduce ourselves into kind of feeling like we know a lot about practice because we read a lot about practice. So just as much as we might name drop in professional settings, sometimes we name drop in settings related to our own practice. Sometimes we may even name drop during our practice sessions. And so what if we let go of that and just allowed ourselves to practice from the heart? And so devotion is important, not because devotion to an individual is important. However, appreciation and gratitude is important. And those two things also can be a little hard, at least in American culture. Adopting a position of gratitude is not always the easiest. Right? And so, for those for whom there's a problem but with, resting into gratitude, I would ask them, for the next couple of weeks, to begin to explore gratitude and appreciation, for things that are hard, gratitude and appreciation for gifts given, gratitude and appreciation for support given, gratitude and appreciation for precious human rebirth, gratitude and appreciation for ability to practice, gratitude and appreciation for living in direct relationship to phenomenon, visual phenomenon, olfactory phenomenon, taste, touch, everything. Gratitude for the ability to be able to interact with these things and to bring them into practice. gratitude for thought activity, as well as gratitude and appreciation for stillness. Gratitude and appreciation for every inhalation, and gratitude and appreciation for every exhalation. Gratitude and appreciation for this heart which beats in our chest, and these lungs which fill with air. Gratitude and appreciation for whatever we're sitting upon. Gratitude and appreciation for our spinal column, for our skull, for our eyeballs, for our ears, for the Buddha, for the Dharma, and the Sangha. Gratitude and appreciation for being able to not only hear the precious Dharma, but to be able to practice the precious Dharma. Gratitude and appreciation for direct experience. Gratitude and appreciation for the practice of meditation. So, in modern Tantric Buddhism, I wrote a bit about. There's this time, I was receiving instruction, with a group of people from Bokor Rinpoche on Mahamudra. So we were in Bodh Gaya, and it was in this big tent, and he was talking about, the Lama, and so basically, the one of the most, one of the fundamental kind of, bases for our practice is the teacher. And of course, at first glance, right, the teacher is a physical person, right? Maybe, right? But conventionally, I guess we could say a physical being, not necessarily hominid. They have the capability to speak. They have the ability to share Dharma instruction. They have the ability to have been trained in a reliable way, and that there's a sense of authenticity in their experience, and that we feel connection to them. That's kind of the basis, and important, definitely important. But then what the teacher is so much more, right? The teacher is the air we breathe. Right now I have a cup of tea right here, a big pint glass of tea, right? And this tea is kind of bitter and earthy. And the experience of drinking the tea and then the aftertaste is the teacher. Appearance as we experience it right now is the teacher. Sound is the teacher. The love of your family or partner or partners is the teacher. The changing seasons is the teacher. Thought activity is the teacher. Lack of thought activity is the teacher. Difficult emotion is the teacher. Joyful experience is the teacher. This unified field of experience that we're all occupying at the same time is the teacher. So in this way, appearance is the teacher. Thought activity is the teacher. Everything inwardly, outwardly, secretly, in essence, is the Lama. And so, in a sense, real Guru Yoga is devotion to the continuity of realization of everything in the moment, had by all people in the past, all lineage teachers in the past, whether we can visualize them or not. Fourth Karmapa, fifth Karmapa, sixth Karmapa, seventh Karmapa, all the Gyaltsapas, all the Taisatupas, all the Sakya Lamas, all the Gelug Lamas, Tsongkhapa, Tilopa, Naropa, Virupa, Maitripa, Saraha, Shavaripa, Dorje Chang, Kutuzangpo. That's Guru Yoga. So that, has nothing to do with a PhD. That has nothing to do with, Yale or Harvard or Columbia. It has nothing to do with Oxford. It has nothing to do with the Sorbonne. It has nothing to do with, universities in Rome. It doesn't have anything to do with puffed up, well-educated, well-heeled. It has to do with direct experience, and this is something that we all experience. Even if some of our senses are dull, right? Could be deaf or blind in one eye. That's the teacher. We could have a really shitty temper. That's the teacher. We could feel really stingy. That's the teacher. Our kleshas are our teachers. It's all the places where we get stuck. Sarah, I really love that. Thank you. My glasses ossuary. I love that. So this devotion is it has much less to do with kneeling down to a lama. Although, there can be a lot of humility in that too. Sometimes, especially as Americans, again, are to a fault. You can kind of see this, evinced by our outgoing presidential kind of whatever they are, nightmare. Is this go it alone at the expense of the entire world and everybody in this country? Go it alone at the expense of public health. Go it alone, go it alone. That's the kind of, deep, heavy shadow side of going it alone. Right? So sometimes it's true that the best antidote to pride is to do prostrations. Or to the student who's I don't need all these people. Oh, then maybe you should go kneel to one. Or do prostrations to one. When does our pride, and then the more subtle aspects of pride, the pride of knowing too much, of having rooms full of books, and all sorts of weird art, all sorts of Dharma clothing. When does that somehow become a surrogate for experience? And why do we let it become a surrogate for experience? And so Jared asks a question saying, I'm doing Nindra, Sakya sadhana for it, and devotion to my Guru comes very naturally and easily, but I have difficulty with devotion to lineage lamas. They're so anonymous to me and I can't find literature on many of these people. Do you have any recommendations? And yeah, so I mean, on one level, like you can essentialize it, and you can say, like, we could, like, for example, in the Sakya tradition, most of the Lamdre teachings come from Virupa and from Krishnacharya, right? And they come up, right? And then there's Sakya Pandita, and the lineage, we can breathe life into the lineage by recognizing that, in that particular context, in the context of the Sakya, then that that lineage, like a snake of realization, passing from mind to 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 your present, root teacher, to you. That continuity, and there's this element in Tantra where sometimes the most important thing is the continuity, this living thread, this energetic, approach from quote unquote point A to quote unquote point B. But we know that it's not static, right? It's not like this just came out of, this is where like even science is like probably not accurate, where it all came from the Big Bang. Well, what happened before that? So we don't need to preoccupy ourselves with the source, and we don't have to preoccupy ourselves with the end. It's the continuity, everything that comes down through us. Right? Like if I stick my finger in an electrical socket, I'm not going to be like, where's the source of the electricity that's like shocking me? Like we don't need to worry so much about that. We need to just experience the flow of everything. I was actually just reading a little bit before this started that there is, I haven't read the study itself, but there's a study published by Harvard, but which indicates that people tend to spend between, I think it's about 46 or 47%, maybe even as high as 49% of their time thinking about the past and the future. Right? So that's like half the time. Half of our waking time is spent worrying about the past and worrying about the future. Right? So with Guru Yoga, we're not like, it's not like walking through a museum, looking, oh, there's so-and-so, 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 so-and-so. So Guru Yoga is about, living experience and the continuity of living experience that's always available to us. Right? And the blessing is that there's no cut in that, right? There's no breakage in that continuity. And that's why we celebrate it. We celebrate it because it's alive. So on one level, a very conventional level, like I would, if it feels, interesting to you, go out and read about all of the different Sakya patriarchs. I mean, I have done that, not with the Sakya tradition so much, but with the Nyingma tradition and the Kagyu tradition, and try and read as many namtars and stories as is possible. Sometimes it's boring, and then sometimes, we can find things in their lives that we really connect to. And so even if so-and-so may have lived in the 15th century or 16th century, they're, like take Taranata. Taranata, was a great teacher in the Sakya tradition, and Taranata was phenomenal. So anyway, that's how I would address that. So now, in an effort to get further away from, our obsession with, the Buddhist Brahmins in the United States, I would like us to begin to look at, so I've got a couple books. I'm just going to kind of open them up. And the Museum of Namtars is like the house houses St. Peter wanted to build on Mount Tabor. Yeah, and we can get lost in those too. Beautiful. And actually, just while we're on this topic, I had taught this class back when I ran Geltz Rinpoche's Dharma Center here in Brooklyn. Over the course of a year, we read 12 namtars, and then there would be time to discuss them and kind of sift through them for relevance, right? Like, how does this, almost like digestion, like, eating the namtar and then seeing, what parts are like salient to myself and my experience, and what parts are kind of like, literary elaboration, right? Because again, we need to be a little honest with ourselves. The namtars are like the Bible, are not objective reality. They are written by humans to convey a point. The conveyance of that point is a positionality that is loaded. You can just put it that way. But anyway, I would be interested in January. There are a couple things I'd like to begin to implement in January, but I think I'd like to have a year-long Tantra class and a year-long Namtar class, for us to kind of get into these things in greater detail. But what I have is, and actually where I, when the American Buddhists are, I'll still throw you off a cliff, Pete. When American Buddhists can get too, heady and intellectual, and just, name dropping and dissertation dropping, I like to go to the Hindu tradition and the Sufi tradition for devotion. And I feel like they are much better at just open arms and open heart and just letting go. Letting go of the seriousness of Buddhism. Letting go of, like there's a difference between intentionality and just being ourselves. Right? And sometimes intentionality can get really neurotic. Sometimes intentionality, when it gets neurotic, it actually can become quite harmful. And so I just opened up, well, of course I did, this book called Singing to the Goddess, Poems to Kali and Uma from Bengal. And it's compiled by Rachel Fell McDermott, who's a scholar on Kali tradition and Shakti, I guess you could say Shakti traditions. But I like this because, so this particular song is by Ram Prasad Sen, who was a great kind of wild, insane, mad, possessed Hindu tantrika, who was obsessed with Kali. And he would dance and sing, and that was his devotion. That was his practice. And why, bringing him up, I guess, just open up to him, is important is because, in Dharma settings, we've inherited a very kind of monastic perspective. A lot of the Dharma that comes to us through monastic lineages, and somehow we've all decided that, oh, well, that's the way to practice as a monastic, even though I'm a layperson and I have kids and family and a busy work life and, all of these other things, right? I enjoy sensations. I'll just put it that way. And I practice with my enjoyment of sensations. And I don't view, monastic renunciation any higher than being a layperson. I just don't. But I think there's been this kind of attitude of preference towards those traditions, and I don't mean them any harm, but I do want to question why it is that we do that, and why we view that as more pure than other ways of being. Because again, our practice is about coming back into the reality of being, not the maintenance of monastic discipline. So, maybe we should have more dance and devotional music. And maybe we should have drumming and guitar playing and tambourine shaking. Maybe we should have piano. Right? Maybe we should have more art as part of our practice. And maybe our practice can afford to be a little bit more experimental rather than feeling like it has to be, just prim and proper, and, vegetarian and this one particular way. The tricycle way. The tricycle, yeah, no. Anyway, I'm sure I'm going to get some hate mail from them, but or from others. But I am serious. Like, there is this like element in the tantric tradition where it's like, wave your freak flag, high. And so like, why can't we practice like that too? Just like let it go. Like let it go. Let go of wearing all black. Let go of just like, I'm Buddhist. And open it up, because our experience of phenomenon, if your experience of phenomena is like this, like good luck with your Mahamudra, Yes. Yeah, actually, maybe there should be like a Dharma freak flag competition. Like a design competition. And then we can run to Tricycle's headquarters and plant it high up on the roof of that building. So anyway, so Ram Prasad Sen says, black clouds have arisen in my sky, and my mind, my peacock, dances, prancing in joy, thundering, ma, ma, ma. Clouds clash, bedecking mountains with lightning flashes and smiles of bliss. There's no stopping me, no rest for me. Water rains from my eyes, soothing my heart's thirsty bird. After this life, there's the next, and so many still to come. Not for me, says Ram Prasad. No more births, no more wombs. Letting go, just letting go. Here's another one. This one's from someone named Ganapati Patak. I'll worship you with tears, Ma. Why do I need Ganges water? With flames from the fire of my suffering, I'll cleanse the altar of my heart. Day by day, I'll offer you the oblations of my pain, calling Ma, my mantra, while egotism and envy sizzle in the blaze, the five senses and their objects, the six enemies. I'll even add my wishes and desires. These are the gifts that I place at your feet. So Ma, come and stay a while. Wild-haired one, I reach out to you, cupped hands brimming full with flowers of love's devotion. Getting out of our skin, getting out of our like tightness, right? And I love Shabkar, I really do, and I love meditation instructions. Otherwise I wouldn't be doing this. But I think it's important to kind of like let loose a little bit and just let the heart be open, right? And this is what's meant by Mahamudra realization only really dawns through devotion, right? So again, it's not writing a check to your Lama. If only, right? Like, man, that would be, that would be easy, you know? Write a check to your Lama and receive, 6 installments, and you will receive Mahamudra instruction. Like, no, of course not. That's not the way it works, And so, how do we open up our heart to everything? Opening that tightness in our heart, like massaging that, and even just start by massaging your heart center. Oh, letting go, letting go, letting go of incessant running after the tradition. And in fact, like, the tradition ends with you, doesn't it? And then it re-begins. The tradition is your experience. It's not about waiting. Oh, please, like, give me some of the tradition. The tradition is within our experience of mind in the moment. It's within our experience of sound and color and taste and touch. And to receive, to not be overly polite, but to allow ourselves to receive. And so, this is a good one too. This is by, sorry, I'm all teary, I can't even read. Dinram. Renunciation's agonies form the stalk where black lotuses bloom. In the lake of my heart streams Shakti in constant waves. Because of this beauty, my blind darkness is lightened, my deepest sorrows destroyed. Through a cavity in my heart, the fiery serpent arises, blazing high. My sky brightens, I float in breezes of bliss. Good fortune is here. Granter of dreams, the black moon smiles. How can I speak of her elegant beauty? Colorless, yet glowing with color, Shiva's beloved laughs in her bridal chamber. Dinram's heart. This one's even better. God, these just get better. So this is from Mahendranath Bhattacharya. Tell me, what are you doing now, mind? Sitting there with a blind eye? There's someone in your own house, but you're so oblivious. You've never noticed. There's a secret path with a small room at the end. And what an amazing sight inside. Caskets filled with jewels that you never knew about. There's a lot coming and going along that path. Go upstairs to the highest room, and you'll see the moon rising. Pramik says exactly, keep your eyes open. If you want to be awake in yoga, you must travel in this secret way. Get out of your skin. Get out of your head. Here's another one from Ram Prasad Sen. Hey, it's not wine I drink, but nectar. Victor Tikali. Winos think I'm a drunk, but my intoxication is mental. With the molasses given by the teacher and the spice of desire, and my knowledge as a brewer, the drops get distilled in a vat. Sipping that makes me drunk. I purify the process with Tara Ma, the best mantra. Ram Prasad says, drink this nectar, and all human aims are yours. Drink this nectar, and all human aims are yours. Oh, God. All these serious Buddhists getting their PhDs right now are struggling with their Pali and their Sanskrit and their classical Tibetan. They're freaking out over their grammar. I'm just sitting here in bed in Brooklyn. Okay, let's see. Oh, this is a good one. This is for people who are stuck with this like obsession about being a yogi. And this one's by Girichandra Ghosh. I plaster myself with ashes, twist my hair into matted locks, and wear snakes for garlands around my neck. He is naked, crazy, and rides a bull. That is my husband. I did the 5 austerities for 5 years, and I got the madman of my heart, bowing to him. I laid magnolia buds at his feet. He loves me. The cremation ground dweller relies on me. Because of me, he's always floating in streams of tears. That drug addict, Bola, openly admits it. If it weren't for me, he'd have no one. You know, these like I think I mentioned it the other day actually in I guess the Cho teachings on Tuesday night. Yeah, I was in this charnel ground in West Bengal in I guess at the end of February, and it was it was like it was a kind of big charnel ground, and it was in Tara Pith, which is this kind of sacred, very sacred place for the Hindu version of Tara. And there were all of these drug addicts and very shady people kind of hanging about. And it was not it was shifty. There were shifty people assaulting, actually grabbing Rod and I, and we had to kind of push them back, and they pushed us and were yelling in our face. And these are the kinds of people we want to hang out with, not these people who are fighting over tenure track positions in major universities. So I'm just going to kind of come back to these comments on the side. So Camille writes, thank you so much. This is beautiful. What you say brings some light to a contradiction I'm battling with, a strong devotion to these practices, and at the same time an uneasiness with spiritual people in the rigid sense this term often takes. Could you give the title? Yes, and thank you, Daniel, for responding. I'm sorry, Camille. Yeah, so singing to the goddess, poems to Kali and Uma from Bengal. And actually, there is another volume that Rachel Fell McDermott, the scholar who did this, wrote, which is longer, a little, it's thicker. There are more pages, but that's good too. And then there's a really wonderful book by June Daniels, actually. I would look up June Daniels. There's a book called Offering. I can't read it from here, but I would look up June Daniels as well. She does a lot of. She's an anthropologist, or writes about the anthropology of religion, and she's done a lot of field work in West Bengal. So there's a lot of Shakti stuff that she's encountered, and that has this very strong devotional kind of piece to it. Which is important because, again, in fact, yesterday was Thanksgiving, and we were at a friend's house, and at some point we got on the topic of spirituality in the wellness industry. And I know exactly what you mean, Camille, especially when we have these kinds of very rigid ideas about spirituality, like I'm spiritual and I only do this, safe stuff, and, don't push my buttons or my envelope. Don't put my envelope in the shredder, and that's fine, right? There's a huge multi-billion-dollar industry kind of taking advantage of you as you do that. But really, the essence of these practices is to push ourselves a little closer, ever closer, ever closer towards direct experience of that which awakens us. Right? So the question becomes, why do we have to be rigid? And what is it about that rigidity that's comfortable? So, I'm gonna turn to the Sufis now. Sufis are very, very. Their poetry is powerful in kind of using the metaphor of love. So, this is from Ayin al Quzat Hamadani. Oh, would the eye had never seen her face, that the heart had never shared the sin of the eye. That's a short one. As long as one chest tip of the hair of your existence still remains, I fear the sect of self-worship will survive. You claim I broke the idol of illusion. I'm liberated, but I fear your manifesto is itself an idol. I like this one. I fear your manifesto itself is an idol. And when does the meditation instruction become an idol? What need lovers for world's delight, or the moth for the refined pleasures, viewing the garden? His lips parched for water of the union with the beloved. What need to chase the fountain of Khazir? He who falls in your quarter, what need for the caravans of paradise, except to seek your love? Surrendering his body to the couch of your disease, what need has he for the healing breath of Jesus? If the friend did not sit with him in his retreat, what need for the cloister of solitude? Today he gives up his soul to separation. Why should he wait for the promise of tomorrow? What need any more for glass after glass of red wine, intoxicated, unconscious with your amorousness? I am that moth at the lamp of your face. What do I need with the candle of manifestation? The love, with the Sufi, devotional songs are all about love and drunkenness, and both the love and the drunkenness are symbols for that blissful union, and the drunkenness is again, a symbol for bliss. So, we have to ask ourselves, how can we get loose when we need to get loose? I don't mean to throw everything away, or kind of throw the tradition out at all. But, there's this kind of unsaid and hard to describe and hard to delineate, at least intellectually, aspect of devotion in Mahamudra practice that we should begin to get comfortable with. And again, to kind of move away from some of these trigger words, like devotion is triggering, right? Why is it triggering? It's triggering because it's been abused. Oh, yes, yeah. Which one? The Singing to the Goddess, Poems to Kali and Uma from Bengal. I think it was this one. And then I also particularly like The Drunken Universe, an anthology of Persian Sufi poetry. Quite nice. Although I will say Peter Lamberm Wilson is a kind of problematic person, for those who don't know him. But really nice. But devotion, like, it's been abused. It's in places where Dharma is just about Oh, the Sufi one. Yeah, sorry. The Drunken Universe. This is the one that I don't know if it's still in print. Actually, this edition's only been limited to 200 copies, but I'm sure you can get it somewhere. In any event, and then the Sahaja traditions. So this is also a really nice book. Sahaja, In Quest of the Innate, an esoteric fusion of Bengali poetry through the Charya and Bal songs. This is not so maybe I'll write this one down. So these are my secret weapons. Let's see. When my so that's another good book, Sahaja in Quest of the Innate, and so these are all songs of varying traditions that all kind of took root in Bengal. And Bengal today is West Bengal, but also extends into Bangladesh. For those who are interested. So I'm just pulling this one up. I don't know how good it is, but shall I ever get a life to sit in the assembly of saints? In my neglect, the days reach an end, and the time threatens me. Oh, time threatens me. So many gods and godheads in vain await to have a human life. Having had such a life now, why, all mercy, must I waste it so? You who have traveled across so many thousands of wombs, oh my mind, say what you have made of this human petal. Forget never, O palate of the mind, and keep a watch on all this commerce. Lalande warns, no more solid ground for you, once you lose everything. That was written by Lalande. So some of these, in this particular title, Sahaja in Quest of the Innate, are pretty rare that these were recorded. So you know, this is important because you can't really experience Mahamudra by just being intellectual and by following the rules. You know, you can't get it from accumulating texts. You can't get it from accumulating reading transmissions or empowerments. You can't get it from, mailing huge checks to Buddhist organizations. You get it from being open and confronting that which prevents you from being open. And so that's, the sense of tightness in our heart. It's our lack of generosity towards others. It's all of the projections we put up, like kind of, wheat pasted signs all over appearance. It has to do with all of the ideas that this mind seems to need, all of the stuff that those in the ivory towers feel that we need. But this is also why some of the most dynamic practitioners, both in the past as well as, into these times, are people who have not really cared about towing those lines, towing the lines of intellect, following the rules. So whether or not it's that a visualization arises in an order unfamiliar or out of step with other ways, or whether or not it's, something much more technical, like the order in which the four joys arise, or the way in which the nature of mind is experienced. If we force ourselves to confine our perspective to one particular structure, then we are going to have to follow that structure. If we can allow our mind to be free and spacious, unoriginated, unborn, then we can approach that from many different places. We can approach that from the way we eat. We can approach that from the way we sleep. We can approach that from the way we love those who we love. We can approach that while we bathe. We can approach that in every moment. So the Mahamudra yogini or the Mahamudra yogi doesn't have to read 1,000 things. You don't need to read, Nagarjuna or Chandrakirti. You don't have to worry about Mipam. You don't need to know much. And, that's what all of these other traditions show us. And again, the Buddhist Tantric tradition is deeply, deeply aligned with these other traditions, with the Hindu Tantric tradition, with the Sufi tradition, and with this kind of very amorphous and still very hard to define Sahaja traditions. Very fascinating, topic, Sahaja. And yet, we gravitate towards this ridiculous, limited way of being, limited way of seeing. I'll tell you one thing, and this is now me just expressing a pet peeve, but I don't know why Buddhists have to talk about Mary Oliver so much. It just seems like, there are certain poets even where it's like they've been accepted by Buddhists, and so Buddhists will only talk about them. And I know that, people love Mary Oliver, and I don't mean anything against Mary Oliver, but, what about the poet in our heart? What about the poet in our DNA? What about the poet within the way we experience phenomenon? What about trusting the poet in us? What about having our own experience? Astrid writes, devotion is intrinsic to many indigenous African spiritual traditions, so I'm really relieved and pleased to hear about the link between devotion and Mahamudra, which fits my ancestral spiritual lineages. I found the devotional piece missing from other Western Buddhist traditions I've experienced. Yeah, I mean, I've been in these settings where, during a break from teachings, everyone eats, and it's all just like some kind of weird Lutheran experiment of just sitting and eating silently, and just I mean, food is to celebrate. It's to be celebrated. Our bodies are to be celebrated. Get out of that tightness and get into a bath, into a bathhouse or into a hot spring or, onto a dance floor or whatever it is. I want to make sure that that is clear, I guess, and that's why I'm, why I'm bringing this up. If we rely too much on the published books, all the published works, they're still moving in a direction. They are. We have to remember, even using this phrase eyes on the prize, we need to be able to focus on what is important. And much of what, arises within the publishing world, much of what arises, even within much of the public discourse of Buddhism is good and important, and, nothing against that. But with respect to our practice, we need to keep our eyes on the prize and keep our heart open. And of course, how that's going to arise for each of us is going to be different. Okay? And that's fine, and that's great. And that's to be celebrated. But the headiness, this kind of ivory tower aspect of Dharma is it's a place where we can easily check out if we're not careful. And there are people, who can do it, who can kind of keep their heart open and remain, in the academic world. But, I think the place I want to end today is we invariably are going to have to account for ourselves. And if we have the benefit of the kind of death where we get to be laying in bed and engaging in life review, right, then we're going to have to account for our practice and account for what we let ourselves do and what we didn't let ourselves do. And just to think, I didn't let myself go. I thought I had to be, boxed up. I thought I had to follow the instructions. I didn't experiment. I mean, I will just say, I will not be saying those things on my deathbed, because I live to practice and practice to experiment, and every moment is a moment to engage in Mahamudra, successfully or not. But the larger piece is engaging in this kind of, practice, coming back, and practice, coming back, to practice, coming back. Dancing, getting free, celebrating with food, getting free. Celebrating. Even sometimes when we look at these, tsok practices, making offerings, and sometimes they're so, just boring. And, who celebrates that way? I would hope that, on my birthday, I'm kind of an introvert, so I don't do big birthday stuff, but, I don't want to have a boring experience. I don't want to celebrate things in a boring way, celebrate life. So how can we celebrate? Be open. Invite people in. Put down your tightness. So I just want to, I want to share this just because I don't want, I want everyone here to be able to experience Mahamudra. I don't want you to feel like you have to be a particular way. What does it mean, even just conceiving of mind unborn? What form does the mind unborn take? What form does the unborn mind take for you? And then again, how do you, on an individual level, celebrate and honor and present with dignity in the way that's appropriate for you the arisal of the unborn mind? So with that, I guess we'll pause here. And next week, maybe I'll bring us back into meditation instructions. But for now, I wanted to talk about the heart and fun and love and gratitude and appreciation. So in this moment, I want to dedicate any merit from this session to the alleviation of the suffering of all beings. May all beings in this moment who do not have access to the resources needed for awakening, may they be blessed with these. May any benefit from these teachings propel all beings into the realm of Mahamudra. And may armies of yoginis and yogis arise from Mahamudra and breathe new life into the way Dharma is to be practiced. May everyone be free, may everyone be healthy. May plagues and epidemics dissipate. And may the heart of wisdom arise in your heart at all times. Take good care, everybody.